All right, baseball fans, my name's Mitch Gatzke. This is Ducks on the Pod, the season preview special. And let me start off with an apology. I've been kind of dragging my feet on this thing, trying to make it absolutely perfect for you. And the fact is, it's never going to be that way. So I decided to just jump in today, record this thing, get it out there for you all before we're too deep into the season and none of this is even going to matter. So I'm going to talk about the AL first and then the NL. You're going to follow along with all the notes and the links that I'm going to drop for you. Follow along at fourlights.fm/ducks/5. And yeah, here we go. Ham, take us away. All right, before I begin, I should mention I've got 6, I guess you could call them sections for each division here. I've got the fun part, the piece 2, in other words, goodbye, the new sheriff in town, the wild card, the winner, and the top to bottom, which will give you 1 through 5 of each division. So let's start off in the AL East. The fun part here is the Yanks are good again, and more importantly, they're young. And while you may hate them, hell, you probably hate them, there's no question a good Yankees team is good for baseball. And these are not your father's Yankees. They're young, exciting. They're not established and boring, as has been the case in New York all too often. Now we've got Brett Gardner and Jacoby Ellsbury still patrolling left and center field. There's newly signed Matt Holliday taking over as the DH. CC Sabathia is still a serviceable starter. Chase Headley remains the best option at third for now. And Tyler Clippard will likely slot into the 7th inning role. But other than those 6, the regulars are all under the age of 30. The Gregorius one, Didi Gregorius, and second baseman Starlin Castro both seem like they've been around forever, but they're still in the thick of their prime. Both are solid offensively and good defensively, and that stability up the middle is going to be crucial for this team. It's very unfortunate to hear about Gregorius' injury that's going to keep him out probably most of April, if not into May. Going to be something to watch here for the Yankees, how they handle that shortstop position here in the early going. In the bullpen, Aroldis Chapman and Dellin Betances are, for my money, the best lefty-righty 1-2 punch in all of baseball. Being able to lock down late leads is going to be another huge advantage for this team. The rotation will be led by Masahiro Tanaka and Michael Pineda. An optimist will take heart in Tanaka quietly being one of the best pitchers in the AL last year. His strikeout-to-walk ratio was over 4.5, which ranked 8th best in 2016. The skeptics, on the other hand, will point to the pitiful numbers that Pineda has piled up over the past 2 seasons. But catcher Gary Sanchez, first baseman Greg Bird, and right fielder Aaron Judge are the core of this new era in Yankees baseball. They're all 24 and entering their first full season. And watching this trio develop together is going to be the focus for this summer for Yankees fans and Yankees front office personnel. They really want to see if these are the 3 guys that they can hang their hat on. It's going to be huge if those 3 guys can take the steps forward that we're expecting from them. Now, peace to Big Papi.
I'm teaching tennis on the side now.
David Ortiz decided to hang it up despite his MVP-level production last summer, and I can't think of any player of his generation who's more beloved by fans and respected by colleagues. He really is one of the few Latin players around who's not afraid to show his personality. With the language barrier, a lot of Latin ball players just kind of fade into the background. Big Papi certainly is not one of those guys. I mean, who can forget his unifying message following the Boston Marathon bombing? When you look at what he was saying, that's a powerful thing for a guy who's not even really from the area. He's just living there. It's a powerful thing for him to say. Really admire him for that and just the way that he went about his business. The worst thing that the Sox can do this season is attempt to replace him because really they won't be able to. He was a once-in-a-generation talent and character, and it's going to be tough, but you just got to move on. Helping in that effort will be the new sheriff in town, that is Chris Sale. I think Sale agreed to be shipped out to Boston because he knows he'll never have to wear another baggy throwback jersey as long as he's there. But in all seriousness, this is really big for the Red Sox. even more so with David Price starting the season on the DL. Sale was the grand prize this offseason with hardly any top-of-the-rotation starters available on the open market. And once again, dealing Dave Dombrowski gave up some prospects and got his man. Now the Sox have two of the top lefties in the game with Sale and Price. A team that I would have loved to see go after Chris Sale in this past offseason is the wild card spot here for the AL East. Those Orioles starters are the wild card because just like last year, this Orioles offense is going to smack the ball all around and a lot of times out of their tiny ballpark. But the problem, yet again, is going to be finding a cast of 5 hurlers who can get their team through 6 innings consistently. And like I said, I expected the O's to be active in the hunt for one of the few worthwhile options available this offseason. They obviously were not. And while you can't totally blame them for not wanting to overpay because of the scarcity in the market, you have to wonder what the plan is here. I mean, starting pitching was the one thing holding the O's back in 2016, and that's why it's so surprising to see them do absolutely nothing to address it in the offseason. Sure, the market for starters was pretty barren. Still, how do you not do something, anything, to improve upon a rotation that struggled so mightily last year? In 2016, the O's used 9 different starters, and they combined for a 57-58 record, right around 5 2/3 innings a start, which is just about average, a 4.72 ERA, a 141 whip, a 754 strikeouts per 9, and a 221 strikeouts to walks. So really, no matter how you slice it, Baltimore's starters as a whole were seriously subpar last summer. And to make matters worse, the closest thing that the O's have to an ace, Chris Tillman, is unavailable to start the season. So now what? Well, there's a great piece by Sam Miller on ESPN.com that dives into just how the O's have consistently outperformed their projections year after year. And this is a must-read because not only does it detail how the O's have done it, it gets into the real reason why they project to be so poor every year. And if you ask me, Buck Showalter does not get nearly enough credit for the magic that he works with this team. And that's proven by Miller, who doesn't even mention Showalter as a contributing factor in his article. Jonah Carey added his own spin on the phenomenon of the O's bullpen helping them beat projections. They'll certainly be relying on that again, as that starting rotation just really is the worry. But if they can get it into the 6th, 7th inning, you're going to like their chances with that bullpen. The winner in the AL East this year has got to be the Bo Sox. Poppy's gone, and the 3 Bs, Mookie Betts, Jackie Bradley Jr., and Xander Bogaerts are all coming off career years. But so what? I mean, this team is going to be even better than it was last summer, and I think 90 wins in the AL East crown is certainly within reach for the Bo Sox. Top to bottom, I've got Boston, Baltimore, Toronto, New York, and Tampa. The Red Sox are clearly the strongest team on paper, even with some question marks in the corner infield spots. The Orioles, if they get better production from the starters, they'll earn a wild card spot. If they don't, they may end up in 4th place here in this division. But I think there's a better chance of the former than the latter, so I'll give them 2nd spot. Up north of the border, Edwin Encarnacion is gone, and that wouldn't be a huge deal had Michael Saunders not left as well. Now they've gone all in on Kendrys Morales at DH, and while they've still got big names like Josh Donaldson, Troy Tulowitzki, Jose Bautista, etc., I just see too many big holes, particularly in the defense and pitching departments. I foresee the big names coming up short when trying to compensate for those holes, and the Blue Jays missing out on the playoffs because of it. 4th spot, it's officially a new era, but it's only the beginning of said new era. And when it comes down to it, I just don't trust this starting rotation of the Yankees to hand enough leads over to that 2-headed monster at the back end of the pen this season. Be patient and enjoy your new team, Yankees fans. Your time will come soon, just not quite yet. And the Rays are probably not even playing for next season, but rather the season after next. Still, as Jonah Carey writes, there are plenty of reasons for optimism for those unfortunate souls who are subjected to watching their hometown team play at the county dump, commonly referred to as the Trop. That wraps it up for the AL East. Let's kick it over to the AL Central now. The fun part in the Central is the Tribe going for it all. They came oh so close to ending their own terribly long title drought. They could taste it, but they didn't get a chance to actually eat it, and now they've transformed from a small market success story into a serious contender. They're a bit banged up as they head north, with Lonnie Chisenhall and Jason Kipnis currently on the shelf, but hey, injuries didn't seem to matter last year, did they? Peace to the little respect I had left for the Chicago White Sox. I hate their pinstripes. I hate that Hawk Harrelson is such a homer on the TV broadcasts. I hate the way they treated Robin Ventura and Ozzie Guillen before him. I hate the way their park looks on the side of the freeway as you fly by it on your way into Chicago. I do love the irony of the new stadium logo. I will always hate A.J. Pierzynski. I hate the fact that former GM, now president of baseball operations, Kenny Williams, and current GM Rick Hahn still have jobs despite collectively running this franchise into the ground over the past 5 years. But most of all, I hate that they don't even wear white socks. And now, not only do I hate the Chi Sox, I find it hard to even respect them since they've traded away Chris Sale and Adam Eaton. So my question for Southsiders is, why don't you just all root for the Cubs? The new sheriff in town in the Central is Edwin Encarnacion. This man averaged 38 homers and 110 RBI over the past 5 seasons. And he's simply been one of the very best power hitters of the past half-decade. And while it's unfair to expect him to keep that up as he enters his age 34 season, the thought of inserting him into the middle of this lineup is terrifying for everyone outside of Cleveland. After all, this team did score the 5th most runs in 2016 without him. The wild card in this division is certainly going to be the Tigers' starting rotation. Justin Verlander bounced back in a big way and actually called his shot mid-season, which I'm not afraid to admit I ridiculed at the time. He was kind of robbed of the Cy Young last year. I don't know, the debate could be had at least. Another season like last would be a very welcome sight in Detroit. AL Rookie of the Year Michael Fulmer was even better than we here in Detroit could have expected. Now he'll be tasked with avoiding the sophomore slump and meeting the expectations that are now going to be quite unreasonable. Jordan Zimmermann was the best pitcher in baseball last April before injuries derailed his season. This man's performance, more than any other, will have a direct impact on whether or not this is an actual race for the division. If he's healthy and can pitch his game, the Tigers might actually keep it somewhat close into August, but if not, the Indians will simply run away with this and no one will be able to catch them. Daniel Norris and Matt Boyd round out the rotation. They both showed some promise at times last season. Norris pitched well in July and August before taking a step back in September, and Boyd had a rocky July before settling in during August and September. And then there's Anibal Sanchez, who's on an unfriendly contract and has to pitch somewhere in 2017. Looks like he'll work out of the pen to start the year, with Boyd having won the final rotation spot. The decision to release Mike Pelfrey and relegate Sanchez to long relief duty speaks to the Tigers' goals of this season. Contending would be nice, but the real question in Detroit is, what happens next? This summer can go one of two ways for the Tigers. Either they find the secret sauce and go on one last contending crusade with this core of players, or they fall behind early and officially embrace the sell-off come July. There's no doubt in my mind that starting pitching will determine what kind of season this is for Detroit. And with the Twins not quite ready yet, the Royals falling apart at the seams, and the White Sox just giving up altogether, the race for the AL Central really hinges on this Tigers starting rotation. The winner is going to be the Tribe. They know exactly who their 5 starters are, and they've got capable stopgap options should they need them. On that fact alone, the Tribe has a leg up on most of baseball. And then you look at the late inning guys and wonder how anyone's going to be able to score against this team. Cody Allen, Andrew Miller, Brian Shaw, Dan Otero. Doesn't get much better than that. That is until you add to the equation Boone Logan, who did not allow a home run in 33 appearances at Coors Field last summer. These 5 could make it damn near impossible for opponents to score beyond the 5th inning, and you got to like that if you're a Clevelander. The only weaknesses I can see here are some shaky defense from time to time and little to no offensive production from the catchers. Other than that, this Cleveland team is scary good. Just like the Bo Sox, the Tribe should have little issue racking up 90 wins on their way to a division title. So top to bottom, I've got Cleveland, Detroit, Minnesota, Kansas City, and Chicago. It's the Tribe and everyone else in this division flat out. The Tigers, it just takes too much of a positive outlook to put the Tigers in the playoffs at this point. JD Martinez is already hurt, and more crippling injuries are to come. The saving grace here is that the rest of the division is pretty bad. The Twins are on the rise, but not ready to seriously contend yet. If Miguel Sano can cut down on the Ks and Byron Buxton can continue to progress, this will be a fun year for Twins fans, and one they may look back on as the beginning of a new era for this franchise. In the meantime, get ready to lose a lot of ball games. The Royals, their window has closed. This core is going to be gone after this summer, whether by trade or free agency. And I predict trade, which is why I have them finishing in 4th here. And I hope that KC fans enjoyed their run. It was fun while it lasted, but it's over now, and really who knows when this team is going to be that good again, if ever. The White Sox, forget it. If the Southsiders get 70 wins, I'll be shocked. And at this point, I'm begging them to unload Jose Quintana, Todd Frazier, Jose Abreu, David Robertson, and anybody else, just so that we can see them play for real contending baseball teams. That's going to do it for the Central. It's short and quick, frankly, because it's the Indians and everybody else. A wise man once said, "Go west, young man." So here we go. The fun part in the AL West is the Mariners and Astros making moves. Roster transactions are fun to talk about, and fans of the Mariners and Astros had a very fun offseason. The M's continued to retool with an apparent emphasis on getting younger and more versatile. They recognize that they have the sluggers, Robinson Cano, Nelson Cruz, Kyle Seager, and realize that they need other types of pieces to flesh out the roster. In an era of aimless, head-scratching player personnel decisions that rarely seem to fit together, it's refreshing to see a team actively moving forward in a specific direction. Good for them. The Stros had a bit of a different mission over the winter. That was augmenting the studly roster they've already got. And boy, did they. Carlos Beltran, Brian McCann, and Josh Reddick are tremendous veteran additions for this young team. Playing ability aside, these three are leaders in the clubhouse, and their many years of Major League experience are going to help this young core exponentially as they continue to develop. I can't give enough props to Mariners general manager Jerry DiPoto and Astros GM Jeff Lunau for the way that they approached this past offseason. And now we wait and see if the moves they made were, in fact, good ones. Piece 2, the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. I hope. The Raiders are halfway to Vegas. The Warriors are moving across the bay to San Francisco. Soon the Athletics will be the only game in town for Oakland. And while that sucks for the city's football and basketball fans, it may actually be a blessing for the city and its baseball fans. If the city decision makers are smart, they'll make it a priority to get the A's a new stadium that they've desperately needed for years now. Not only will that be more cost effective than a Raiders stadium would have been, it'll also change everyone's perception of the baseball scene in Oakland. Currently, the A's are basically house sitting for the Raiders during the summer months. The Coliseum is oversized and unimpressive. I've never been there personally, but I've also never heard anyone say a single positive thing about it. The real tragedy here is that A's fans deserve so much better. They've turned their suboptimal ballpark into a totally unique atmosphere. It's not like Busch Stadium in St. Louis or Wrigley Field, where you can watch a game and get a real sense that a majority of the fans are intently focused on what's going on. It is, however, the closest thing that we have in Major League Baseball to the Latin American crowds that we see in the World Baseball Classic. There are cheers, drums, and other assorted instruments, banners, and overall just excitement that simply is not seen in other places. Commissioner Rob Manfred has repeatedly said that getting the A's and Rays settled into new ballparks takes precedence over possibly expanding into new markets. And now that there's a sports vacuum in Oakland, let's take care of a fan base that has proven it deserves better than it's been given. Let's get the A's into a new park they can be proud of, one that they can actually call their own. The new sheriff in town in the AL West is Carlos Beltran, my favorite signing of the offseason. The Astros have the talent. Now they need the know-how. And who better than Beltran? On top of being the greatest switch hitter of all time, Beltran is also one of the godfathers of this generation of baseball players. He's been around for almost 2 decades, played all over the country, and always led by example. Not only can he hit in the middle of this lineup, he'll also be able to teach the younger guys what it means to be a true professional baseball player. It's almost like having another coach on the field or in the dugout. I mean, he is DH more times than not, but still having a guy who's a player who can put his arm around these younger guys and guide them through the season, it's going to be huge for the Astros for sure. The wild card in this division are the Mariners newcomers. I said they made a lot of moves. They brought in Gene Segura, Gerard Dyson, Drew Smiley, who's currently injured, Danny Valencia, Mitch Haniger. The M's were the most active team in baseball this offseason. And if the new pieces fit well, they will contend for a wild card spot. But if not, it'll be back to the drawing board yet again, and possibly time to start thinking about unloading some of these veterans. We haven't seen the M's in the postseason since they fell to the Yankees in the 2001 ALCS. Personally, I'm hoping that drought ends this year. The winner in the division, I got to go with the Astros. They are the sexy pick here for a good reason. That lineup is absolutely stacked. The bullpen is sneaky good. The only issue is going to be consistency from the starting rotation. And when I look at the roster, I find it hard to believe that they've managed to compile such a group of young stars. Center fielder George Springer is a legitimate two-way superstar. If not already, then he will be this year. Alex Bregman has this aura about him that you simply don't see with a guy who's played in only 49 Major League games. Carlos Correa's talent and baseball intelligence blow my mind, and I'm not even sure what else to say about him beyond that. I've just decided that Lance McCullers Jr. is the new best pitcher you've never heard of, taking over for Jose Quintana. And coming into this season, Jose Altuve has 1,046 base hits in 3,361 at-bats. His 27th birthday is next month. Unreal. So top to bottom, I've got Houston, Seattle, Texas, Los Angeles, and Oakland. The Astros' starting rotation concerns me, but the rest of the division has that same issue, and the rest of Houston's roster is so loaded, I'm not sure it's really going to end up mattering. The Mariners are being touted as a sleeper team by many this year, but I'm wide awake. I mean, I'm penciling the M's into the AL's second wildcard spot. Cano, Cruz, and Seager will, of course, lead the way. But I think Edwin Diaz will become a lockdown closer for the M's, which will ultimately push them into the playoffs. The other team in Texas, the Rangers, I love some of the individual pieces on this roster. Rougned Odor, Yu Darvish, Jurickson Profar, Joey Gallo. But I just don't see them coming together to form a playoff team this summer. The pitching is what concerns me. I mean, as of right now, on April 5th, they don't even have a fifth starter listed on their depth chart. That's got to be a concern. And as was the case last year, the back end of the rotation will be a cause for concern all year long. For the Los Angeles Angels, Trout and Pujols are still in the middle of that lineup. Andrelton Simmons is still the best defensive infielder in the game. Yunel Escobar has become one of the best table setters around. Cole Calhoun and C.J. Cron are good, not great, but good players. Cameron Maybin is one of my personal favorites, and Luis Valbuena is currently on the shelf, but he was one of my favorite offseason signings. Overall, though, this team is lackluster, particularly in the pitching department. Some are anticipating the Halos to be a pleasant surprise this year. I'm calling for yet another disappointing season. And over in Oakland, I really hate myself for making the favorite reference of even the most fringe fans here, but this really is a Moneyball team. Sonny Gray could pitch for anyone. Chris Davis power would play anywhere. And I'll be watching Marcus Semien closely this year. In 2016, he increased his power numbers dramatically, albeit at the expense of his batting average, while also making 14 fewer errors and 77 more chances in the field. But other than those three, this roster is the island of misfit toys. That's not to say they're not good players. It's just that they've been passed over by most of the league to land in Oakland on cheap deals for a team that needs to fill out a 25-man roster. It's going to be a long season in Oakland. That's going to do it for the American League. Let's head back east and see what's going on in the National League. The fun part in the NL East is going to be watching just how desperate the Nationals are going to get this summer. Jonah Carey says there may be no team in baseball in more of a win-now mode than the Nationals right now, and I agree. I mean, you look at it, 2 years, including this one, left with Bryce Harper. Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg are both free agents after next year as well. Dusty Baker is in the final year of his deal. Essentially, this team is going to look much different in 2 years, and the time to win is clearly now. So you can understand why Nats GM and President of Baseball Operations Mike Rizzo dealt away his top pitching prospect to acquire Adam Eaton from the White Sox this past winter. And then you scratch your head wondering why he didn't go get a power arm to anchor this bullpen, the Nats' biggest perceived weakness coming into this year. Washington will certainly be buying come the trade deadline. The only question is, how much help are they going to need? The reason that bullpen is an issue is because Mark Melancon is gone. Peace to him. Melancon was lights out down the stretch for the Nationals after being traded from the Pirates at the deadline. So why didn't the Nats re-sign him? Well, San Francisco did offer Melancon quite a hefty deal, and it's understandable why Washington wouldn't want to match it. But that still leaves the Nationals without an established closer, and that's really why they're looking like a team that'll, again, be able to win the division without much trouble, only to be bounced in the first round of the postseason. The new sheriff or sheriffs in town here are the Braves' veteran starters. The Braves were busy in the offseason bringing in old players to open up their new ballpark, and the starting pitching is of particular interest with 3/5 of the rotation new to the team this year. Jaime Garcia is 30 years old with 8 major league seasons under his belt, but his experience pales in comparison to that of Bartolo Colon and R.A. Dickey. This has got to be the first time in history that a team has signed 2 starters over the age of 40 in the same offseason, and props to Atlanta for doing it. They know they're not ready to contend yet. They know they need to fill seats to pay for their new park. This feels like an attempt to eat up innings and move some tickets at the same time, and even if it's a bit gimmicky, I like it. Another team that was active, picking up a lot of starting pitching help in the offseason is the Marlins. Their starters are the wild card here in this division. Tragedy struck and the Marlins lost their franchise player and ace Jose Fernandez. And it's a bit insensitive to say, and I don't mean it that way, but it's time to move on because the Fish need to figure out how to proceed. And it's unfortunate because with Fernandez as the number one, this rotation looks pretty good. But without him, it's going to need to stay healthy and catch a lot of breaks. Edinson Volquez had a rough year pitching for the Royals last summer. A return to form would be a huge boost for his new team. Volquez looks much better as a supplement than the main event of a starting rotation. Unfortunately, under these circumstances, the Marlins need him to carry the bulk of the load. Dan Straley had shockingly good numbers pitching in a tough park with the Reds last summer. And I was in attendance on July 17th as he gave up just 3 hits in 7 innings of work against the Brewers. Coincidentally or not, that start really turned things around for him, and he went on to win 10 and lose just 2 in the final 2.5 months of the season. If he can keep that up, the Marlins are going to look like geniuses for picking him up in the offseason. Each of the past 2 years, Tom Kohler's innings have gone down and his ERA and WHIP have gone up. He must reverse those trends, or else he'll continue to be an undistinguished pitcher and the Marlins will stand little to no chance at contention. Wei-Yin Chen was held to just 22 starts last summer, and in 123 and a third innings, he surrendered 22 home runs. At 1.61 home runs per 9 innings, he would have ranked in the bottom 5 of that category had he pitched enough innings to qualify. Needless to say, that cannot continue. Adam Conley can become a really good pitcher if he just cuts down on the free passes. 62 and 133 and a third innings, or 4.19 walks per nine. It's far too many. If Conley can find the zone, the Marlins will have found an above-average fifth starter. I think the Marlins can be a good team. The lineup will score a good amount of runs. The bullpen will preserve most of the leads that they're given. The question will be, how many of those leads will they get to protect? How well can this starting rotation hold up? If they can, the Marlins may be able to keep things close with the Mets here into late summer. The winner in the East is going to be the Nationals. Their bullpen is one big question mark, but that won't be enough to keep the Nats from winning what is still a pretty weak division. They've just got too many great players on the field. Really, the only guy who sticks out negatively is Ryan Zimmerman. His 2016 slash line of 218, 272, and 370 just simply is not good enough. Even for a last-place team, never mind one that has World Series aspirations. In today's game, when you can look to other positions for power, you still have to have better production from your first baseman. If he doesn't pick it up in the first couple of months here, look for Washington to be in the market for a first baseman and a closer come July. Top to bottom, it's Washington, New York, Miami, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. The Nationals lack the one thing you need most to make a run in the postseason, and they won't be satisfied with just another division championship. The Mets' one-dimensional offense and the lack of flexibility really kill their stock in my eyes, but that starting rotation is undeniable, and hopefully they can all stay healthy this year because that alone should put them in the thick of things in the NL wildcard race. But with an over-reliance on the home run ball and a well below average defensive efficiency rating, expecting anything more would be a stretch. Before we get to the Marlins, there is a decided drop-off here. In fact, I wasn't really sure which of the three remaining NL East teams to put behind the Nationals and Mets. I went with the Marlins because their lineup fits well with the ballpark they play in, and I love the arms that they've got stockpiled in the back end of the bullpen, but that starting rotation really could hold them back all summer. The Braves have a revamped rotation and a much stronger top of the order, so they should feel better about themselves this year, but there's still a lot of work to do before they contend for anything. This summer should, however, be a nice step in the right direction for them. And with the Phillies, there's not much in the way of proven talent on this roster, but man, there is potential, exponential potential, if I may. The key for the Phils this year is going to be continued progress. And basically this year comes down to figuring out who to keep around and who to send away. It's going to be another long summer in Philadelphia, but at least there are some players to get excited about now. That's all for the NL East. Let's move now to the NL Central. The fun part in the NL Central is obviously going to be watching the Cubs defend their title. For the first time in 108 years, the Chicago Cubs will defend their World Series championship, and the only thing more fun than watching them win the first one will be seeing if they can do it again. So piece two, the Cubs being lovable losers. It was only a couple years ago that the Cubs were everyone's favorite underdog. Well, now that has all changed. The Cubs and the Yankees have really switched roles when you think about it. The Yankees are the up-and-coming team everyone is excited about watching grow up together, and the Cubbies officially came of age last fall. So how does everyone, most importantly the Cubs themselves, adjust to now being the team everyone is aiming for, the team everyone expects to be right back in the Fall Classic again this year? I'll tell you this, there's no man I'd want leading that charge more than manager Joe Maddon, and this title defense is going to be so much fun to watch unfold. They'll do it without their center fielder and leadoff man from last year. The new sheriff in town, sorta, is Dexter Fowler. He's the same sheriff, I guess. He's just transferred to a new district. Fowler takes his table-setting ability to a team that desperately needs it. There may not be a signing from last offseason that made more sense than Fowler going to the Cardinals. He's great on defense, which the Cards need help with. He's great at getting on and coming around to score, an attribute which the Cards seriously lacked last year. And he's great at just setting the tone, which will help a team that's generally pretty deadpan in St. Louis. I love the move from both Fowler's and the Cardinals' perspective, and it's even more fun that he'll be taking on his old team so many times throughout the summer. Definitely something you want to tune in for. The wild card in the NL Central is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Andrew McCutchen will, of course, be moving over to right field and he says he wasn't asked about that decision. My question for him is, why would he have been asked? He hasn't been a good center fielder for 3 years now, and they've got a better option in Starling Marte. So I'm confused why it even had to be said that it wasn't an ask. I get that McCutchen is the franchise player and all, but come on, this is a business decision. And honestly, the move to right will probably help McCutchen offensively. At least you'd hope so. So McCutchen, Marte, and Gregory Polanco make for one hell of an outfield, and there's a very interesting mix of young and old on this team. The Pirates' hopes will likely come down to the performance of 3 young starting pitchers. That's Jamison Taillon, Chad Cole, and Tyler Glasnow. They've arrived at long last, and their team is relying on them heavily. If they live up to the hype, this will be a good summer in Pittsburgh. The winner, no surprise here, it's the Cubs. They should have no trouble at all winning the Central. I literally don't see one thing lacking from this team. And it's amazing how they've put this thing together so perfectly and efficiently. Top to bottom, we go Chicago, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, and Cincinnati. There really are no glaring weaknesses on this Cubs team, and even if there was one, Joe Maddon would be the perfect guy to find the solution. And the farm is still chock full of top prospects, so expect Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer to make a move should they need to. In St. Louis, improved defense by the way of Fowler's arrival and Matt Carpenter's move over to first alone should win the Cards a couple more games than last year. An extra year of experience for relatively young guys like Aledmys Diaz, Steven Piscotty, Randall Grichuk, and Colton Wong should help them all improve. Losing Alex Reyes for the year due to Tommy John surgery does hurt, but not as much as it would other teams. St. Louis has still got a wealth of arms to fall in behind Carlos Martinez in that rotation. I like the Cardinals to be able to capitalize on the weaker lower half of the Central Division and sneak their way into a wild card spot. The Pirates fit right in the middle here. They're definitely better than the Brewers and Reds. And they're definitely not as good as the Cubs. And I think they'll be slightly worse than the Cardinals. After the 3 outfielders, they just don't have enough firepower to keep up. Watch out for first baseman Josh Bell and the trio of Taillon, Cool, and Glasnow as the Pirates go through a bit of a transition season, but I'm expecting them to miss out on the playoffs this go-around. The Brewers have the edge over the Reds here because they've just got a couple more long-term pieces in place, I think, and their prospects are also just 1 or 2 steps closer to the bigs. The offense should be able to hold its own. The real test is going to be getting the pitching they'll need to stay in games. Doesn't help that Matt Garza and Junior Guerra are already on the DL. That's not a good early omen. It's going to be another long summer in Cincinnati. This is what happens when your GM refuses to make any sort of real roster moves. Reds fans, he may have moved into a new role in the organization, but you're still looking at Walt Jocketty's mess. The long overdue front office shakeup has brought some drastic roster changes, but also a lot of bad baseball. Incredibly, there are only 4 guys over the age of 30 on this team. Luckily, one of them is still Joey Votto, who's still a top 5 hitter in the game. That's it in the Central. Not many surprises there. Let's head out west again for the NL West. The fun part out in the NL West is that the Dodgers look even better than they did in 2016. Some projections have them as good as the Cubs. CBS Sports seems to think the same. And both of these pieces are from January, but really not much has changed for either team since then, which is why I included them. The Dodgers may not have the same superstar household names that the Cubs do, but they do have excellent role players who can facilitate the superstars that they do have. And really, it won't matter if the Dodgers are better than the Cubs or not until a 2-week stretch in October anyway. In the meantime, all they've got to do is worry about winning the division. And frankly, I don't see the Dodgers struggling too much to do that. Peace to none of LA's big 3 free agents. This is no diss to Josh Reddick, who did depart for Houston. This is simply an acknowledgement that LA needed to keep Kenley Jansen, Justin Turner, and Rich Hill in Dodger blue, and they did just that. Reddick was a rental anyway, and they already had a replacement lined up in the form of Yasiel Puig. However, had Jansen, Turner, or Hill walked, there's no telling who the Dodgers would have replaced them with. The Dodgers are World Series contenders, and in that position, you've got to re-sign your pending free agents. The Dodgers did just that, and now they're ready to fast forward to October. The new sheriff in town is the Giants' Mark Melancon. Once Jansen re-signed with LA and Chapman went back to New York, Melancon was the only closer left on the open market, and the Giants' bullpen ruined their 2016 season with only the Diamondbacks, Angels, Rockies, Twins, and Reds having converted a lower percentage of their save opportunities. The logical solution was to go out and sign the best closer available. The Giants did that, and now they hope Melancon and a reconstructed bullpen can turn holding on to late leads back into the strength that it had been for years before becoming a real liability last summer. The wild card here is the Colorado Rockies. They signed Greg Holland and Ian Desmond, making a big splash in the offseason. Everyone was touting them as a potential sleeper team, getting excited about the chance of having meaningful baseball in Colorado come September. Then spring training started, and the injury bug swarmed the Rockies camp. Desmond, David Dahl, and Tom Murphy are all out for an extended period of time. And imagine losing 1/3 of the starting lineup just before the season begins. And that's not to mention the second cancer diagnosis for Chad Bettis. Our thoughts and prayers are, of course, with him. So a lot of glitter has already worn off the Rocks, but still, there are reasons to be excited about this squad. Arenado is an MVP candidate regardless of who he's playing with. Trevor Story was the most captivating story of last April, homering 6 times in his first 4 games. He finished with 27 in 97 games. That's bonkers. DJ LeMahieu won a batting title last year and is one of only 5 players to hit over 300 in each of the past 2 seasons. Gerardo Parra, Charlie Blackmon, and Carlos Gonzalez still combine to make quite an outfield, and there's still hope that this group of young power arms in the starting rotation can minimize the inherent perils of playing 81 home games at Coors Field. Look for the Rockies to make a little bit of noise if they can stay in contention long enough to get those guys back from injury. But the NL West is the Dodgers' show. They made it to the NLCS last year, dealing with constant injuries, especially to the rotation. An improvement in health should help the Dodgers dance back to the postseason as they bring the band back together for yet another run at that elusive World Series title. Let's go top to bottom in the NL West. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Colorado, Arizona, San Diego. The Dodgers are a formidable force, likely on their way to another 90-win division championship season. We know all about the players. What we don't talk enough about is the job that Dave Roberts did last summer in his first year as the skipper in LA. He pushed just about all the right buttons during a turbulent season that could have easily gone south when Kershaw hit the shelf. Watch the Dodgers play this season, but pay attention to how Roberts has them playing. That'll be the real key for them, I think. The Giants, even though they did manage to sneak into the postseason in 2016, some people are calling for a bit of a bounce back here in 2017. They were, after all, the best team in baseball at the All-Star break before falling apart in the second half last summer. I'll join that parade, if only because I think this division gives them the opportunity to rack up a good amount of relatively easy wins. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves calling for the Rockies to return to the playoffs. Let's just be satisfied saying that they're most probably going to win more games and be much more entertaining this year than they were last. Let's see if they can tread water until the injured guys come back. Then we'll talk about what this might realistically be. As I've said about many of the teams in baseball this year, the D-backs will score a good amount of runs and just pray that their pitching can hold up. Arizona had a shocking 5.09 team ERA in 2016. If that doesn't fall significantly, it won't matter what the offense is doing. This is an interesting year for the D-backs as they usher in a new school type of regime. And if nothing changes on the field, expect that front office to start being more proactive about making things change. Speaking of making things change, the San Diego Padres. Name one player currently listed on their active roster. How many of you just said Will Myers? My guess would be all of you. This summer is going to be all about finding out who else the Padres want to keep around. It's going to be ugly, but it's got to be done. Stay classy, San Diego. That does it for the NL. Before we get to the playoffs, I would like to mention that when it comes down to it, baseball fans, there are reasons to watch every Major League Baseball team this year. Yes, even the White Sox, Reds, A's, Phillies, Padres, and Rays have some entertainment value to offer us. So check them all out periodically throughout the season. Give them a little bit of love. As far as the playoffs are concerned, the writers over at CBS Sports have their predictions. I have my own. Here we go. On the AL side, it's going to be the Red Sox, Indians, Astros winning divisions, Mariners and Orioles taking wild card spots. On the NL side, I like the Nationals, Cubs, and Dodgers to take home their division crowns, and the Cardinals and Giants joining them as the wild card representatives. A World Series rematch would be so much fun, and at this point, the Indians and Cubs do look like the two best teams, but as we know, things rarely go as planned in the great game of baseball. And while I'll probably regret this, we're still 6 months away from the postseason, so these predictions are little more than wild guesses anyway. What the hell? Give me the Astros and Dodgers to meet up in the 2017 Fall Classic, with the Dodgers winning in 6 games. Feel free to mark my words so you can make fun of me for trying to be the smartest guy in the room when the Indians and Cubs give us the rematch we want so badly. I do graciously accept any and all criticism, but that's the way I see it. And my rationale behind it is the Astros and the Dodgers are the two teams that are not only in a good position right now, but they're also teams that are capable of making the moves that they might need to make, that they will need to make come July when they need to pick up another pitcher or another bat off the bench. Whatever it may be, these two teams are very well positioned to go out and make that happen. So yeah, that's how I see it. Dodgers over Astros in 6 games. I know a lot of people are going to disagree. A lot of people are going to agree. But really, only time will tell. That's going to do it for me this week. Thanks again for joining me. Remember to follow us on Twitter at DucksOnThePod. Like the Facebook page. Rate and review. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Now let's get to the business of enjoying this baseball season, shall we? Remember, keep your glove on the dirt, your bat off your shoulder, and always keep your eye on the ball.